So what a great night we're in for, because tonight we're going to be talking about Ruth's romance. Ooh, very nice. But at first I was wondering, why was I given the topic of Ruth's romance? And I thought, surely that's a topic for Mr. Browning. But then I thought, I get it. Maybe he wants to hear a few funny stories of Matt and his attempts of romance. But you know what? He's actually quite good, so I can't do that to him. And then it clicked. Andy, tonight you're going to hear some stories from the experts, so make sure you're taking some notes. Nice one. But no. But no, seriously, I'm really looking forward to tonight's topic. I'm a sucker for romance, and I absolutely love the book of Ruth. But before we read that, I thought it might be a bit of fun to find out some of the romantic things that the men in this church have done for their wives. Ooh. So let's start. Let's get the first one up. I'm going to start experts first. There are many, but one that really sticks out that Matt did for me is this February on Valentine's Day. I got home from work and there was a post-it note on the door, and he'd done this whole scavenger hunt around the house of different surprises, and I opened the door and there was a chocolate fountain and candles and flowers, and yeah, very well done. You did very, very good. And throughout the day there was blanket forts, movies. He even gave me a masterclass on how to make my favourite cocktail, which was wonderful. But enough about you. Let's move on. Who we got next? We have Corenza next. And she said, my proposal. He proposed to me on the trampolines we met on, covered in pictures and memories of us, and put tea candles and fairy lights everywhere. So well done, Jason. Next up, we have Angie. Woohoo! She said one of the many romantic things Terry has done was booking to take me away trekking in the Himalayas for my 50th birthday, somewhere I've wanted to go all my life. Very lovely. I want to see some pictures, please. And next up, we have Jean. Now, Jean said, Bob and I had only just started going out when I started my nursing training in London. I remember the next summer that he was away in Scotland for 2 weeks with the church fellowship, and at the end of the holiday he drove all the way back from Largs in one go and surprised me by meeting me as I came off duty from a 1 till 10 p.m. duty. I don't think he would risk doing that now. Next up we have Rose. She said, a long time ago, Tim carved me a tiny Welsh love spoon to wear on a chain as a necklace. I don't wear it now, but it does sit on the mantel shelf in our living room. Very, very nice. Well done. And now, Andy, it's your turn. Ooh, let's see if you actually are good at this. Ruth said, when I was looking for bridesmaid dresses, I fell in love with a gorgeous red satin evening dress. She didn't choose it for a bridesmaid, but Andy secretly bought the dress in my size and packed it in his suitcase, and it must have taken up about half of it, and surprised me with it halfway through our honeymoon. I think you passed the test. Very well done. And finally, my favourite, I asked my in-laws, are you ready? This is what Heather had to say. She said, years ago, he bought me a tumble dryer for my birthday. He'll deny it, but it did happen. That was fantastic. Well done to all the gents in this building. Very good. I've even wrote down here, you're all Mr. Darcy's to these ladies. Well done. So let's turn our attention to the passage tonight and let's get reading Ruth chapter 3. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, my daughter, I must find a home for you, where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor. But don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. I will do whatever you say, Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than which you showed me earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." So she lay at the feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, "No one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor." He also said, "Bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out." When she did so, he poured it into 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her, and added, He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.' Then Naomi said, 'Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today.'" Love that scripture, it's wonderful. So here we have Ruth, the ultimate outsider in a foreign land, seeking a husband to provide for her and a home. Now, back in those days, it's a little bit different to what it is today, I'm sure. If you've lost a husband, it must be really difficult to go and find another one for security, for safety, for home, for food, and just to survive. Now, I guess it is similar in some ways today. You're still looking for a husband for a nice home and security and all that, but completely different. Now, Naomi wants Ruth to be cared for, provided for, and redeemed by what they call her guardian redeemer. Now, that's the nearest male relative who helps a relative in need. So we read her plan. Now, I love this bit. I can imagine Naomi saying to Ruth, "Now go and get your perfume on and your best clothes, and then go to the threshing floor and lie there and wait for him to wake up and be like, 'Who's this at my feet?'" Now, we looked, can you imagine Boaz waking up and seeing a woman at the floor, at his feet on the floor? It must have been a bit of a bizarre plan for Naomi to give to her. But we looked at the kindness of Boaz last time, and we know that Naomi really trusts him in order for her plan to work. Otherwise, I don't really think she would have suggested it. That Ruth trusts her mother-in-law so much that she says, "I will do whatever you say." Now, I love my mother-in-law, and I would do whatever you say too, so you can do. But if you're unsure what the threshing floor is, I did a little bit of research, and you should see up here. Now, a threshing floor is a smooth, flat surface that is used in the process of harvesting grain. Farmers like Boaz used a threshing floor to separate the grain from the chaff. The harvested produce would be spread over the threshing floor, and then animals, cattle or oxen, would be led over to it to crush and break the sheaves apart with their hooves. At times, people used sticks to beat the sheaves apart, and we heard that last time with Phil. The grain would be separated from the husks or chaff, and then tossed into the air so that wind could blow away the chaff, leaving only the good edible grain. And this was what we call winnowing. Now, the threshing floor is actually really symbolic in the Bible for judgment. There are plenty of examples that you can read. But let's remember, so here is Ruth, lying on the threshing floor, wanting to be redeemed. But let's remember something about Ruth. Now, Ruth comes from the land of Moab. Moab is hated by many. It was started by Lot having a relationship with his daughter. So you can imagine that not many people would like it, or anyone who comes from there. Now, many people would probably judge her on the threshing floor. But Ruth was the ultimate outsider. She was husbandless, in a foreign land, might not be used to the culture or the way of life, and here she is at his feet. And how does Boaz respond? Who are you? That's the best first response, probably better than most other people could have done. But he goes on to respond in a way that shows what a godly man he is. He lets her go back to sleep, and in the morning he gives her 6 measures of barley as a promise that he will redeem her. Now, Boaz responded exactly how we are called to respond. He responded as Jesus would. He is a great example of a godly man back in the Old Testament. A godly man or woman strive to be like Jesus every day. Now, this is the fun bit. When I was growing up, I had a very specific list of what I wanted in my future husband. I even had it as a note on my iPod many years ago. Now, this is what I wanted. Sorry. I wanted a tall man. I wanted a blonde man. I wanted a musical man. That's good. I wanted a man with a big house so I didn't have to think about buying one for myself. I wanted a man with a car. I wanted a man who would take me out to shows and you can get all dressed up like Ruth did in the fanciest outfits. And I think I wanted CEO level, and I wasn't going to take any less. And I don't think I wanted much. But for so many years, I based my choices off this silly little list. And I was at one point almost given what I wanted. But all that went wrong. And now I know that that was to show that my list was a load of rubbish, and it was far inferior of what God's list was for me. So many years after the original list, I chose to write another list, but this time I wrote it as a prayer. Now I have it here. As you can see, I'm not sure people can, you don't have to read it. It's quite a lot of things here on this list. I thought it might have been whittled down, but no, it wasn't. But after writing this list, I was certain of what I wanted. Now, are you ready to hear my new list? Now, I wanted a kind man. I wanted a man with a tender heart, someone who was understanding. I wanted a man who was trusting. I wanted someone who was on a similar level of faith to me. And I prayed that we would both trust our church leaders. I prayed for a loyal man, a strong man who perseveres. Now, I do write here, I don't need him to have big muscles. I just need him to have a good strength of character. I prayed for a good listener, and boy, do I need that with these ears, they're terrible. I needed a bold man. I prayed for a fiercely determined man, a funny man, you need some sense of humour, a truthful man, and a confident man. Now, it's quite a big list to fill, but I knew that this was completely different, and this was God's list, not my list. And God's standards were higher than my own silly little ones. Now, those, along with many other things, were what I was aiming for, and I wasn't going to take any less. Now, I actually wrote this list on the 15th of August, 2020. And 5 days later, Mr. Matthew Breed first contacted me. Oh, spooky coincidence, not God incident. Now, without making his head any bigger than it already is, Matt ticked every single one of those boxes for me. He wasn't tall or blonde, but he was shorter and brunette. He didn't have a house or a car, but he was strong and he was determined. And I'm not saying he's absolutely perfect. You are to me in some ways, but we're never perfect. But he's altogether a wonderful, godly man to me. Now, how much are you striving to be a godly man or woman? Now, I don't know if you can already tell, but this story of Boaz and Ruth is a beautiful reflection of the gospel. A completely different kind of romance. Boaz foreshadows as the bridegroom, Jesus, and Ruth as the bride, us. Now, on my wedding day, I remember walking into the church turning right and seeing Matt at the end, and I burst into tears. I think there are a few of you who can remember that. I burst into tears and just started laughing, and I was so full of joy, and I was so overwhelmed in this moment. And I realized that this is the kind of love that we have for Jesus and the love that Jesus has for us. It's meant to be so overwhelming. So here we are, outsiders, completely undeserving of this divine love that there is for us. And yet we lie at the feet of Jesus, our Redeemer, asking for help. And instead of turning us away, like Boaz promised to redeem Ruth, Jesus redeemed us when he hung upon the cross. And he even does it every single day, even if we don't see it. Now I wonder how many times a day we actually forget this. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. There is no greater love than that, and he did it for you. Now on our staff retreat day on Friday, we had some personal reflection time. We could spend an hour and a half just being in God's presence and listening to whatever it is that he has for us. And I grabbed my iPad and I started drawing this cherry blossom tree that I could see. It was beautiful. And God spoke to me in so many different ways, for the staff team, personally, and actually for tonight too. And one of the things that I was reminded of was John 15, the vine and the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So if you remain in him, you will become more like Jesus and bear much fruit. Now when you love someone, you love what they love. I'm sure many can vouch for that. I never thought I would enjoy watching Marvel movies and hearing every little detail about every little character and listen to different types of music or even watching mixed martial arts. I never thought I would enjoy that. But I've grown to love it because Matt loves it. And when you love Jesus, when you remain in him, you become more like him and you love what he does. And that should be each other. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Now his love and his kindness are the reasons that we're all sitting in this room tonight. You are so loved so deeply that it's almost unfathomable. In Ephesians 3:17-19, Paul prays for the power that we may fully comprehend it. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now, being a godly man or woman means not only do we embody the amazing traits and such kindness to others and patience and so many other things, but your love for people should be just as wide, as deep, as long, and as high. We're called to be kind, to be loyal, to be selfless, to love others as he has loved us, to be godly men and women to the broken world that need our help. So my big question to you is, what are you doing to show your love for others the same way that Jesus loved us? But if you don't know, then I think maybe you need to turn back to your Bible, because Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the most amazing example that you can have with love and loving others and being patient and selfless and everything. Maybe you just need to focus on your relationship with Jesus. Maybe you need to spend 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, just basking in his love and everything that he's done for you and being grateful for all of the different blessings in your life. Now let's reflect the love that Jesus has for us to those who don't know him, so that they too can understand the power of how deep, wide, long, and high the Father's love is for them. And like Naomi says to Boaz, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. So let's be people who won't rest, people who just have to help others, those who can't sit still and have to get up and express his love. Let's recognize the urgency. Let's be loving those who need it until they know the love of God. And along the way, let's not forget how much you are loved by him.